I was living in hell, trying to tell them that, hey, the way that we're living our lives is as if we're going to hell. Knowing that I was physically, mentally, spiritually choosing to sin against God, it's like, how can I do all of that and now come to a place where I've now become saved and God actually loves me? When coming to Christ, I felt like I had two biggest struggles, and my two biggest struggles was pride and masturbation. So know that, okay, that there's grace in life, that, okay, you don't actually need to live a life of sin anymore. It was very hard because that's all I've ever known. I need to actually make the effort to stop sin. And the moment that I made the effort, that's when I saw that, okay, grace was actually there. And the more that I started to continue living a life like that, okay, I began to cleanse myself, I began to purify myself. That's the more that I realized that, okay, there's actually grace. And the more that I continued to work with the grace, that's when I saw that God was actually physically empowering me to say no to sin. You draw nearer to God and God draws like 10,000 steps closer to you. I said, God, I'm tired of this sin and I'm going to stop. The moment I said that, it's as if there was actually power to stop. The grace of God was genuinely evident in my life, and I understood that I need to capture it before it goes. I understood that I need to grab onto it before it disappears, because I felt like if I didn't grab onto it in that specific moment of time in my journey with God, it'll be very hard to loosen.
My name is Sean, and this is Grace Unveiled.
What was your initial understanding of God's grace?
I understood that grace was something that was abound in life, but I didn't understand what grace meant. I believe I was in year 6 where I asked my mum, what does my name mean? And she told me Sean is the Irish way of saying John. So I went and done research, what does John mean? And it meant that God is gracious. I said, oh, okay, this is nice, but I don't know what grace is. And so it was like, how can my name be, I don't know what my name is. And I believe I was coming across a lot of people, especially people that had African heritage. And I was asking them, like, they'll ask me, what does my name mean? And I didn't know. So now that I understood what my name means, I know what it meant, that God is gracious, but I didn't know what grace actually meant. So, I'll say from the age I was born until all the way till the age of 17, I didn't know what grace actually meant, or what God is gracious mean, or what my name actually meant, until I actually came to Christ properly. And I was someone that was a heavy advocate on, like, it's quite bad to even say, but I was a heavy advocate on, if I want to do a certain sin, I can do it. Like, I remember there were times where I'll even come into school and I'll have arguments with like a Christian teacher, and I'll tell them like, yo, like masturbation is fine. Just to, I remember even, like, I even went to like a Friday school, and they would also tell me that, like, if you have knowledge, they were telling me scripture, but they weren't saying it biblically, if that makes sense. But they would tell me, if you have knowledge of a certain sin and you continue to do it, God wouldn't forgive you. So I would play dumb and say, like, I didn't know this was a sin. So I even try to find a certain doctrine that will allow me to sin, if that makes sense. So I was very like a heavy advocate on, if I want to sin, I'm going to sin. And this was my life until the age of, I was born all the way till 17 years of age. So I think my whole understanding of God's grace became more defined when I became a Christian, like a proper actual Christian, born again Christian to the glory of God. But from when I was born, it was like I had a mindset of, as long as I'm a Christian, as long as I believe in God, then I'm fine, I'll make heaven. Until I understood that, it's only by the grace of God that you can actually make heaven. Believing isn't enough. I believe I even read a scripture the other day, and this reminded me of my whole life, that even the demons believe and they tremble. Do you understand? So like, it's not enough if you just believe in God. You have to obey God, if that makes sense. So I believe I was the age of 17, and I actually started coming to God properly, and I started to understand God more and more and more. I started to read men like Paul, and the letters to different churches, the Corinth church, to the Hebrew church, to the Thessalonian church, and I started to read the letters. And I believe Paul says something in the book of Corinthians And when he was talking, he was saying that, yes, there's grace, but does that mean that you should continue living a life of sin? So because grace abounds, doesn't mean that you should live a life of sin. And all my life, I thought that because there is grace, that's a substitute for me to continue living in sin. But Paul clearly goes against that no, there's grace. That doesn't mean that you should live in sin anymore. The grace is there so that you can stop living in sin. So I think the moment that I read that scripture, my whole understanding of grace shifted. That there's nothing that you can even do to obtain grace. Like, yes, you can work for it, but even that works is not enough. I think God even said, God is so amazing. Like, I thought works was enough to get you grace, but that's not even it. It was more so that if you believe in God, you trust in God, you love God with all your heart and your strength, everything that you have in you, that's when the grace comes. It's not because of who you are in church or what you do within God that grace comes. No, it's not like that. And the moment that came out of my mindset, I started, not that I looked down on works, but I started to look at works differently. That's not all about my works. Yes, your works are good, but it's not all about that. It's just about, genuinely for me, I think the pinnacle of my walk was loving God. So the moment I began to understand more about grace, my whole walk with God shifted completely. Shifted on an insane level.
From what you just said, how has your understanding of God's grace grown over time?
My understanding of God's grace is changed a lot in the sense of what God's grace actually is. I mean, I've done a lot of studying on the grace of God, and I've had a lot of preachers talk to me about the grace of God. So the understanding changed in the sense of I need to understand how to make sure that God's grace is available in my life, because the moment that the grace is one short, I understood that mercy is also one short as well. So I feel like the more that I began to get closer to God, that's where I experience more grace in certain aspects. The more that I feel more connected to God, I'll see that there's a lot of grace in different aspects. And one thing that I also realized was that even when like I'm not praying a lot, or even when I'm not reading a lot, or even when I'm not fasting, I saw there's still grace. Like, God is so merciful that he will still provide the grace there, in the sense of I wouldn't be spiritual, quote unquote, but there's grace in certain aspects, if that makes sense. So I feel like the understanding of God's grace has definitely changed from when I first became a Christian, because I didn't know what grace was at all. And by the mercy of God, I've been a Christian for almost 3 years now. So from the moment I was born again, I realized I had a lot of grace in different aspects. But at the time, I didn't know that I had grace in that aspect. It's only now later, within 2 years, that's when I realized that, okay, there was grace when I first began this walk with God, that there was grace in this aspect. But now that I've grown in God by the mercies, that, okay, I understand where there's grace in certain aspects. For example, I think I was even speaking to one of my friends the other day and was basically talking about evangelism. And I realized that when I first came to Christ, that there was a lot of grace in evangelism. I didn't know I was evangelizing as well. So I think that's why there was a lot of grace. But I'll just be speaking to my friends casually about Christ. And there was a lot of grace because I'll see that some of my friends will actually come to Christ. But then now it's like, not that the grace isn't there anymore, but it's like, it's a lot more harder to actually bring them to Christ, if that makes sense. So my understanding of grace has definitely expanded and grown a lot to the glory of God.
Many people can say that they've been saved by the grace, but looking at your testimony, where has God's grace been reflected in your life?
God's grace has been reflected in salvation, mainly. The salvation of God, I think that's the most gracious part. That's the most grace I've ever. The fact that I'm still alive today is, and I'm not saying it like I've been through the most. Nah, it's not even like that. But it's like the fact that I can genuinely sit here today is enough for me to say that God is gracious. And I feel like, yes, everyone can say that they're saved by the grace, but I feel like sometimes grace is it's a misconception, or it's like a miscommon thing. Like, it's just a common thing that's talked about. But being saved by grace is actually very, very deep. Because it's deep. Like, oh, there's deepness. As in, like, grace is, you don't deserve it. And that's what I realized, because my salvation, the fact that I'm saved today, because imagine you're coming from an aspect where you've been in church from the day you was born, and you're still in the world. So you're still going to church every single Sunday, but yet you're still in the world. Even think of it, does that even make sense? That you can go to church regularly, but yet you're still in the world. How does that even make sense? So the fact that I feel like God has saved me, I feel like that's the biggest testimony in itself. The fact that I'm actually saved, because many people, especially in the UK, or especially in African households, or even households in general, that you'll see that someone is saved, and it's only by the fact that someone was praying for them. And even though that they live in a Christian household, the fact that someone was praying, because for example, my mom was praying for me. So the fact that my mom was praying for me and I was in a Christian household, I was still going to church with my mom, but I still thought it was fine to drink. I still thought it was fine to smoke. I still thought it was fine to speak to girls. So I was a Christian, quote unquote, but more time, the fact that I was a Christian, it didn't mean anything, because I wasn't actually living up to the name of being a Christian. So the fact that I'm saved, that was the biggest part, because there was even times where I know that, okay, I'll go to parties, I'll get fried and I'll get high, and the way I had bad highs was like, it was only God that helped me. Like, I remember there was a time, I think this was the first time I ever got fried, and these were the times where everyone was doing THC. So everyone was doing THC, and it was a common thing that, yeah, just toke the vape 2 times and you'll be fine. You understand? But it was like, I done it now. And I remember this was my first time. I think I had the vape on a higher voltage than I was meant to. And I think I toked it like 5 times. Like, I took 5 pulls. The moment I took those 5 pulls, the way I blacked out, it was dumb. Like, I blacked out, and it was like God was trying to make, not a fool of me, but he was trying to teach me a lesson in that car. So I remember I blacked out now, and I was in year 10. I blacked out now, and I remember I would wake up. Every time I would wake up, I would say, guys, we're going to hell. Yeah, like it was, yeah. Like, I would say, guys, we're going to hell. And imagine now, I'm with my neighbor, I'm with my 2 neighbors, in fact, 1 boy, 1 girl. The boy is driving a car, so the boy is driving and then the girl's in the passenger seat. So I blacked out, and then I'll come back to life, and I'm now saying, guys, we're going to hell, guys, we're going to hell. But they're now looking at me like, this guy's fried. So he's just saying whatever. You understand? So I wake up and I'll go back to sleep, wake up again. It was like I was living in hell, trying to tell them that, hey, the way that we're living our lives is as if we're going to hell. So even in that whole story alone, that's when I noticed that God's grace, even when I was in the world, because someone was praying for me, even so, that's how God's grace was able to even find me. So grace is deep in the aspect of God has done something in my life where it's like, I can't even repay him. How can I repay a whole God that has saved me from death? I can't, understand? So I feel like the grace in general was, in my life, was a lot. That even the fact that I'm saved now is even so like, it's dumb. That's all I can say, is actually dumb. Like, to even think about it, like sometimes when I actually think about, I'm saved, like God has saved me, because everyone can now say, they're saved, God has saved them. But when it's close to you, like when it's you and your own testimony, it's like, this one, you know God has done it for you. So there's no way that you can't give God thanks. There's no way you can even go back to the world. Does that make sense? Because God has saved you personally. So you know where God has taken you from. And for me, it was like every time I look at sin, it's like I can't go back to the sin because I know where God has taken me from. So because I know where God has taken me from, how can I not go back to sin? How can I go back to where God has saved me? I feel like personally that would be a mockery to God. Do you understand? If I was to go back like to sin, it would be a very mockery, like a big mockery to God. I was with my neighbours and I was in the car, I never actually shared this with a lot of people, but I was in the car now, and they said that they wanted to collect something. So we went to go collect something, and I said, yeah, I'll come along. So I borrowed my friend's vape for the weekend. So I went now, and I borrowed the vape, and we went into the car, and then that's when things got a bit more hectic. I think we got on the motorway. As soon as we got on the motorway, opened the windows, I vaped it 5 times, max, blacked out. And I was a lightweight in the world as well, so 2 talks was enough. I would be gone. And I think it was on a high voltage, so I think I must have drained the whole time. So I blacked out now, and it's like, it burnt my friend. It was so bad, it burnt my friend's lip. And she was now screaming. The whole thing was just a mess. It was like, if God didn't intervene in that scenario, I know that driver would have crashed. I would have been dead, or my friend, she would be heavily paralyzed. And it's like something would have happened if God didn't intervene. I think we even had to stop because it was getting a bit too much. The car was getting clouded in the car. So imagine someone's blacked out and it's clouded in the car with with vapor. It's clouded in the car. I've blacked out. My neighbor's now saying that, hey, like the vape has burnt her lip, like she's fried. The guy in the passenger seat is also fried as well whilst he's driving. So that's what I mean. It's only God's grace that we actually came out alive that day, because the fact that I've even experienced that and I'm still here is enough. Like, that's enough for me anyways, personally. But yeah.
How do you think that scenario affected your friends, if they're in Christ as of now?
You know what's so sad? Because they didn't understand, they're not coming from a background where their parents are heavily religious or their parents are prayerful. So they don't actually know what God can do, or they don't know the conviction of God. Because I kid you not, that whole week, I felt like the worst sinner alive. Like, I knew what I had done, and I made a vow to myself that I'm not doing THC again. Like, I said to myself, no matter what peer pressure, I'm not doing it again. So for them, it was like, he just blacked out because he's a lightweight. So they don't understand the depths of what I just went through. They don't understand that, okay, I've practically been to hell and came back. They don't understand that, hey, it was only God that actually saved me, if that makes sense. So because of that, they're now looking at it from an aspect of, he's a kid. And my neighbours are older than me. I think my neighbour at the time was around 22, and the other one was around 23. And I was around year 10, so you're 15, 16. So they're now thinking, this guy's just a kid, like, come on, like, he doesn't usually do this, so rush him, do you understand? But it was because, and this is how I knew that they didn't really care about what I had just gone through, because after that, they went and smoked behind my back because, this guy's a kid, do you understand? So they didn't really care. So they didn't understand that what I was going through was actually very, very spiritual. Because even me, myself, I didn't understand what I was going through at the time. But there was like a conviction within my heart that, hey, this is not right at all. Like, I knew within myself this wasn't right. And for them, because they didn't care at all, they didn't have that conviction, they didn't know that it was God trying to pull them closer to him. They didn't understand that grace was actually calling them. So for them, they just ignored the grace, and they didn't actually seek God. They didn't pursue God. They didn't think to care. They didn't think to inquire, to ask God, okay, what just happened in this car that we just went through? Like, what was happening? They didn't care. So I feel like for my friends, it was more so that they just didn't care at all. So it's only now when they come to Christ, that's when they will realize that, wait, this experience that they went through was actually God trying to call them. Because I had only understood this, that God was trying to call me at that time in year 10, was when I came to Christ. If I didn't come to Christ, I would have ever had the knowledge of that was God trying to save me. That was God trying to use me in that moment to try and preach to my friends. That was God trying to use me in that moment to try and tell my friends Jesus is real, and hell is also very much real, if that makes sense. So I feel like for my friends, they didn't really care too much about what God had to say in this moment of time. They were just trying to live life.
Do you think God gives certain people like different levels of grace, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like your level of who you are with God has a part to play. Like, not in who you are with God, but as in like how your relationship with God is. If a relationship with God is very sweet, as if like God is your only friend, how can He not give you grace? How can He not give you things that you don't deserve? If that makes sense. So God is definitely the level of grace definitely depends on the person, 100%. I don't think like I can even sit here and say that mine and your grace is the same. Do you understand? Or mine and somebody else's grace is the same. No chance. No chance. No way. Slow it. No chance. Grace is the way grace works, yeah, is like you can be doing the exact same thing as somebody else. But because God favors that person specifically because of what they have went through with God, God will allow that person to get to where they want to be quicker than you. Does that make sense? Like, I can be praying and fasting, and we pray and fast the same amount of time, but we get different results because there's grace in the aspect of prayer and fasting for me. Does that make sense? Whereas somebody else can pray and fast, and they can hear God's voice like it's water. Like, I've generally seen in my life where I'll do the exact... I think there was even an instance here where I was with my boy and was trying to inquire from God what to do in this certain situation. And I remember I said to my boy, let's go to the AP. Like, let's go to the AP. You understand? Like, it'll be fine because it's our close friend. Even then, they're trying to get closer to God. So it'll be fine. And I remember now, I said, let's go in it. He said, nah, like, we're not on it. I said, what do you mean? Like, I said, bro, like, I prayed, I fasted, like, do you understand? Like, God have mercy. I said, yeah, like, I prayed in it, like, what do you mean? Like, God will be fine with it, like, it's our friend, innit? You understand? He said that he prayed as well and he got a different answer. So he was basically saying, let's see which one was God. Do you understand? Like, let's see which one God was actually, he was good with. So I remember he must have said, nah, we're not going to the AP. I said, bro, like, let's go to the AP, like, it'll be live. Do you understand? Like, it'll be lit. I prayed and I said, yeah, like, it'll be fine. Like, we're not going to smoke, we're not going to drink, we're not going to do the madness. Do you understand? We'll just be there for faith. And I remember now, and he made me look dumb as well because I think someone must have messaged me, or someone must have, what happened? Someone must have messaged me and was like, yeah, someone messaged me and was like, this AP, you shouldn't go to it. But he didn't contact the person to say that, I don't know if that makes sense. Like, he didn't contact the person saying that I should go, he shouldn't go to the AP. The person just messaged me on a random flex, like, sure, why are you trying to go to this AP? I knew he was invited, but you shouldn't go. That's when I realized, okay, grace is different. Grace isn't the same for everyone because I said I prayed. So why am I not hearing God's voice in that moment? I prayed. My friend also prayed. What do you mean? We prayed the same way. We said, God, show us, is this AP fine? So grace is that, yeah, there's no way that grace is the same for everybody. No chance.
What was the biggest struggle you faced in accepting God's grace?
The fact that God actually loves me. And the reason why I say that is because imagine coming from a place where, like I was saying before, that you've been born again or you've been a Christian since the day you entered the earth. And now when you're now born again, knowing that I was physically, mentally, spiritually choosing to sin against God, it's like, how can I do all of that and now come to a place where I've now become saved and God actually loves me? It wasn't even trying to make sense in my head. Like, genuinely, I remember I'll sit in my room and I'll genuinely think about God, knowing that he's seen my whole life, everything, he knows everything because he was there. And him actually seeing that I chose the world and I didn't choose him, knowing that he knows that, it was like, how can God actually love me? So I feel like, but besides grace, I need to understand that God actually loved me first. And then after I knew that God loved me, that's when it was time to face the grace aspect. And also, when coming to Christ, I felt like I had two biggest struggles, and my two biggest struggles was pride and masturbation. Like, those were the two biggest things. And to know that, okay, that there's grace in life, that, okay, you don't actually need to live a life of sin anymore, it was very hard because that's all I've ever known. All I've actually ever known was sin. I knew that God was real, but remember, I'm coming from an aspect, if I believe God is real, I can get to heaven. Does that make sense? So I knew that, okay, God loves me. I knew that there's grace to actually stop sin because I've seen it. Imagine I'm coming to a church and I'm coming to a ministry where I'm seeing people, and I'm seeing people that are fearing God to an aspect of they've physically been at death point in their life. Like, I remember my boy that I knew in the world, he was at death point and he came back to life basically, and God said, yeah, serve him. You understand? So I've seen where God has taken both from. I've come into church and I'm seeing this person that invited me to church was a heavy fraudster. Heavy, as in he was making racks. He was making dumb. Like, I was inspired by him. You understand? He was my boy's cousin. And I'm seeing him make a lot of money. And I'm seeing him change for God. He's inviting me to church. He's saying that, yeah, like, he's taking God seriously. He stopped fraud. He stopped He stopped going to hotels. He stopped doing all this lifestyle thing. I was thinking, wow, like, God can actually change a man. So from the time that I knew that, okay, God is real, from the time I knew that there's actually grace to stop sin, it was coming to the point of, okay, I need to actually make the effort to stop sin. And the moment that I made the effort, that's when I saw that, okay, grace was actually there. Like, I remember there were times where I would come into church and I was coming to church for the wrong reasons. I was looking at girls and I was thinking, yeah, like, this is a bit of me, like, this is food, you understand? Like, this is what I want, you understand? Like, that was my mindset at the time. I'm thinking, yeah, like, I'm trying to, you understand? But more so, there was a thing where, cool, I'll come into church with that mindset, and it was as if, like, God shifted my mindset. It's as if I'll go home, and because I've heard the word, I've fellowshipped, I've spoken to people, I've spoken to the brethren, I'll go home. It's as if, like, there's a hatred within my heart for that desire. It's as if that I'll go home, I'm on my phone and I'm trying to search up certain things, but I don't like it anymore. I'm feeling so bad, the fact that I'm even looking at it, I got disgusted. So I understood that, okay, I put in place that, okay, at this certain time, I will not be on my phone so that I don't fall into sin. And the more that I started to continue living a life like that, okay, I began to cleanse myself, I began to purify myself. That's the more that I realized that, okay, there's actually grace. And the more that I continued to work with the grace, that's when I saw that God was actually physically empowering me to say no to sin. It generally got to a point where I said, I hate sin. I think I even prayed a certain prayer point, and I said to God, do this so that I hate sin. I literally said to God, make every girl ugly in my sight. Because I knew my weak point. I knew that, girls was my weak point. I knew that, okay, I like girls. Like, there was no running from it. I knew I liked girls. Do you understand? So I would literally say to God, make every girl ugly in my sight. Even the ones that I thought were beautiful, make them ugly. Make them ugly so that I don't like girls anymore. And it got to a point where I'd even like speaking to girls anymore. Like, genuinely got to a point where I hated sin. I'll go on Instagram and I'll just be looking at I'll be scrolling through my phone and I'm seeing things. I'm thinking, nah, this is dead. I'll delete that. Went through Snapchat, I'm going through stories. I'm seeing certain of my friends on holidays, certain friends that I liked in the world. I'm seeing them on holidays and I say, nah, this is dead. Like, I don't want this. TikTok, brush. I deleted social media because everything that I was seeing was bad for my eyesight. I hated sin. It genuinely got to a point. That's when I understood that, okay, there's grace. I understood that, okay, this is what grace actually looks like. Like, it's like, okay, you draw nearer to God and God draws like 10,000 steps closer to you. I said, God, I'm tired of this sin and I'm going to stop. The moment I said that, it's as if there was actually power to stop, because I remember I'll tell myself that I'm never smoking again. I'm never going to kiss a girl again. I'm never going to do any of these things again. And I end up doing it. This time, the moment I actually put my heart in it and I said to God, I'm giving you my all, and I'm brush sin, it's as if there was actually power to stop sin. And with pride, it was more so that the more I spent time with God, that's when I began to understand God more. And I started to to act in a certain way that I knew that God will desire. Although I still kind of struggle with it, because we all do, but it was like, I knew that, okay, that this time moving onwards, that, okay, I have pride and I need to deal with this pride one way or another. I need to study God. I need to know who God is more so that I can break away, so that the pride can break away, if that makes sense. So the grace of God was genuinely evident in my life. And I understood that I need to capture it before it goes. I understood that I need to grab onto it before it disappears, because I felt like if I didn't grab onto it in that specific moment of time in my journey with God, it would be very hard to leave sin.
Lord, just come like a rushing wind. Oh, come like a rushing wind.